Okay, so today we're tackling someone who, well, let's just say he generates a lot of conversation. Elon Musk.
Definitely. A figure you can't really ignore.
Right. I mean, you look at electric cars, rockets going to Mars. It's almost like a real-life Tony Stark situation sometimes. And you have to wonder, how does someone get there? How does a kid from South Africa end up, reshaping industries?
That's precisely the question we're digging into. We've pulled together a lot on his background, his journey, trying to connect the dots.
So the idea is to get past the headlines and the tweets, maybe understand the arc.
Exactly. We want to trace it back. Look at the key moments, the decisions, the underlying drive maybe that took him from his early days to where he is now,
Yeah.
using the accounts we have of his life and achievement.
Okay, let's do it. Where do we start? South Africa, right?
Yep. Pretoria, South Africa, born June 28th, 1971.
And what was he like as a kid? Was he already, like, building rockets in the backyard?
Huh, not quite rockets, but the stories paint a picture of a quiet kid, very introverted apparently,
Yeah.
often lost in books or later, computers.
Okay, so more bookish than outspoken.
That's the description. Intensely curious. And there were signs of that drive early on, like teaching himself computer programming around age 10.
10. Wow. That's ambitious.
It is. And then just a couple of years later, at 12, he actually coded a video game called Blastar.
He made a video game.
Made it, and then sold it to a computer magazine.
Okay, wait. At 12, that's not just tinkering. That's already entrepreneurial.
Exactly. It shows that early knack for not just the tech side, but also seeing an opportunity, actually bringing something to market. Even on a small scale, it hints at that combination of innovation and business sense.
Fascinating. But I understand it wasn't like a perfect childhood. There were some struggles.
No, definitely not all smooth sailing. Sources mention he was bullied quite badly, and his parents divorced, which is tough for any kid.
Right.
So you have these difficulties, but alongside them, apparently this growing ambition. Dreams that were already looking way beyond Pretoria. Maybe those challenges even fueled some of that drive, that resilience you see later.
Wanting something bigger, maybe. Which seems to tie into him leaving South Africa. He left quite young, 17.
Yeah, 17, a big move. Part of it was definitely practical, wanting to avoid the mandatory military service in South Africa at the time.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it was also clearly about seeking bigger opportunities. He seemed to feel, even then, that the U.S. was where the future of technology was really happening. So leaving was a huge step, a big risk, really, towards chasing those ambitions.
And he didn't just jump straight to the U.S., did he?
No, he went to Canada first, lived there for a bit, did some university studies, then made the move to the U.S. So it was a multi-step journey.
Landing at the University of Pennsylvania eventually.
That's right, UPenn. And he did a double major, which is interesting in itself, physics and economics.
Civics and economics. Okay, that combination feels intentional almost, like covering the how things work and the how systems work.
You could definitely see it that way. Building a foundation, perhaps, understanding the science, but also the business side.
But it sounds like the traditional university path wasn't quite enough, or maybe too slow for him.
It seems that way. Reports suggest he was already thinking way ahead, focusing on what he saw as the really big transformative areas: the internet, renewable energy, and space.
Those three, even back then.
Yeah. It seems like academia was, useful, but his mind was already on getting out there and doing things in those specific fields. That impatience to build seems to be a constant thread.
Which leads us straight into his first major ventures, Zip2, right? What was that about?
Zip2, yeah, this was 1995. The internet is still pretty new for most businesses. Zip2's idea was basically to help newspapers get online. They created online city guides, directories, trying to bridge that gap between old media and the new digital world.
Helping newspapers adapt. Kind of essential back then.
Definitely. It was about taking information and putting it online in a useful way for local businesses and readers. A pretty smart early play in the internet space.
And it worked out pretty well, I get it.
Oh, yeah. Big time. In 1999, Compaq bought Zip2 for $307 million.
Wow, okay. So that made him
A millionaire at 27. Yeah. A huge validation, obviously, and suddenly he has serious capital.
fuel for the next thing, I guess,
Yeah.
which was X.com.
Right, X.com. This was even more ambitious, really. An online financial services company. Think online banking, transfers.
Disrupting finance, basically.
Yeah, that was the idea. Using the internet to shake up how money worked. X.com itself had a bit of a complicated history, merged with another company called Confinity.
And that eventually became PayPal.
Exactly. That merger created PayPal. And PayPal just took off.
And the payoff from that was even bigger.
Astronomical, relatively speaking. eBay bought PayPal in 2002 for $1.5 billion.
Okay, billion with a B.
Yep. And Musk's share was reportedly over $100 million, maybe closer to $180 million after taxes, some accounts say.
So at this point, he's made it, right? Twice over. Most people would probably, I don't know, buy an island.
Right, but that wasn't his play. That PayPal money wasn't the end goal. It seems it was the seed money, the capital he needed for the really, really big ideas.
Ideas like building rockets.
Ideas like building rockets. In that same year, 2002, he founded SpaceX.
Okay, let's talk about SpaceX. This wasn't just, let's build a slightly better rocket. This was huge ambition from day one, wasn't it?
Completely audacious. The stated goal was to drastically cut the cost of space launch, make it way more accessible, with the ultimate long-term vision of enabling humans to live on other planets, specifically Mars.
Mars. Not just, cheaper satellites. Mars colonization.
That was the North Star from the beginning, according to him. Reducing launch costs was the necessary first step, but the big picture was multi-planetary life, a backup plan for humanity.
How did people react to that? I mean, a guy from the internet payment world suddenly wants to build Mars rockets.
Skepticism doesn't quite cover it. Outright disbelief, ridicule in some corners. The aerospace industry is incredibly established, complex, expensive.
Dominated by giants, governments.
Exactly. And here comes this internet millionaire saying he can do it cheaper and better. Plus, the early days were rough. Rockets blowing up on the launch pad.
Right, I remember seeing those images. Yeah. Failure after failure.
Multiple failures, burning through that PayPal money incredibly fast. Reports suggest he pushed nearly all his fortune into it, risking personal bankruptcy. Huge, huge pressure.
It sounds completely nerve-wracking. What saved it? What was the moment it started to turn around?
2008 was the make-or-break year. After 3 previous failures, the 4th launch of their first rocket, the Falcon 1, finally reached orbit.
Okay, so proof of concept. It could work.
It could work, and that success was absolutely critical because shortly after that, NASA awarded SpaceX a massive contract, $1.6 billion, to resupply the International Space Station.
Wow. From near bankruptcy to a billion-dollar NASA contract.
Huge turnaround. It provided vital funding, yes, but also immense validation. Suddenly, SpaceX wasn't just this crazy long shot. It was a serious partner for NASA, a real player.
Incredible persistence.
Yeah.
But he wasn't just doing rockets, was he? Around the same time, he gets involved with Tesla.
That's right. He wasn't a founder of Tesla Motors, but he joined very early on in 2004 as chairman and lead investor, and then later became CEO during some difficult times for the company.
And Tesla's goal was electric cars, obviously, but what was the specific angle?
The goal was to kill the idea that electric cars had to be boring, slow, compromised vehicles. Like glorified golf carts.
Which was definitely the perception back then.
Totally. Tesla aimed to prove electric cars could be desirable. Fast, beautiful, technologically advanced, better than gasoline cars, ultimately, and then eventually make them affordable for more people.
But again, massive skepticism, right?
Yeah.
The auto industry is another giant to take on.
Huge skepticism. Could batteries ever provide enough range? Would they be safe? Could they charge fast enough? Would anyone actually buy them in large numbers? Plus, the challenges of mass manufacturing cars are just immense.
So how did Tesla break through that?
It started with the Roadster, a high-performance sports car that proved electric could be exciting, that got attention.
Right, the cool factor.
Then came the Model S, a luxury sedan that won all sorts of awards, had incredible performance, great range for the time. It really changed perceptions. It showed electric wasn't just viable, it could be better.
And then the Model 3 aimed for the mass market.
Exactly. The Model 3 was the big push for volume, despite huge production challenges. Production hell, as he called it. It became incredibly successful and really forced the entire auto industry to accelerate their EV plans. Tesla became this incredibly valuable company, defining the market.
It's like this pattern. Identify a huge, entrenched industry ripe for change, fueled by a big vision space, cars, and just push relentlessly.
And connected to sustainability. His vision wasn't just cool cars. It tied into a broader move away from fossil fuels.
Which brings us to things like Solar City and Tesla Energy.
Right. It's all part of an ecosystem in his view.
Yeah.
You need clean energy generation, hence getting involved with Solar City for solar panels.
Which Tesla later acquired.
Yes. And you need energy storage to handle renewables. That's where Tesla Energy comes in, with products like the Powerwall for homes and much larger batteries for utility grids.
So it's generation, storage, and consumption, the car's all linked.
Precisely. Solar roofs, big battery farms helping stabilize grids. It's about tackling the whole sustainable energy picture, not just one piece.
The scope is just
Yeah.
wild. And it doesn't stop there. We've got Neuralink, the Boring Company, Starlink.
Yeah.
What's the thread connecting these?
Well, they seem even more futuristic, tackling maybe even more fundamental challenges. Neuralink is working on brain-computer interfaces.
Brain chips, basically.
Kind of. The initial goal is medical, helping people with paralysis or neurological diseases. But the long-term vision, well, it gets into merging human consciousness with AI. Pretty sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely out there. And the Boring Company, tunnels.
Sounds mundane, but the goal is radical. Solve urban traffic congestion by building networks of tunnels underground, making tunneling much faster and cheaper to enable this kind of 3D transportation system.
Okay, tackling traffic jams. A universal frustration.
And then Starlink, which is technically part of SpaceX.
Right, the satellite internet project.
Exactly. Deploying thousands of small satellites in low Earth orbit to provide high-speed internet basically anywhere on the planet, especially targeting places that have poor or no connectivity right now.
So, global internet access, another massive infrastructure play.
Yeah, connecting the unconnected, which has huge implications for education, commerce, everything.
Man, when you list it all out,
Yeah.
it's kind of staggering. And he does all this very, very publicly. His persona is a huge part of the story, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He's not your typical CEO hiding behind press releases. He's extremely visible, very outspoken.
Polarizing, too. People seem to either see him as a genius visionary or something else. Reckless, maybe?
There's definitely that divide.
Hmm.
He uses Twitter, now X, in a way no other CEO of companies this size does. Direct, unfiltered, sometimes joking, sometimes making serious announcements, sometimes picking fights.
And those tweets can move markets, get him into trouble with regulators.
Definitely. It's generated controversy, lawsuits, SEC investigations. But it's also cultivated this massive, almost cult-like following. People feel directly connected to him and his mission. It's a very unconventional, very powerful communication strategy, for better or worse.
He's kind of broken the mold of what a CEO is supposed to be or how they're supposed to act.
Completely. He's a public figure, a cultural icon almost, as much as a business leader.
But underneath all these different companies, these different technologies, you're saying there's still that single driving goal. It all comes back to Mars.
That seems to be the ultimate through line, yes. He consistently frames it all as working towards making humanity a multi-planetary species.
So electric cars help fund it and shift us to sustainable tech needed for off-world living. Starlink provides communication. Boarding company tech might be useful on Mars.
You could draw those connections. He sees Mars colonization as essential insurance for humanity's long-term survival, a backup drive for civilization. So SpaceX is the most direct piece, but the others arguably contribute to the technological base, the economic engine, or the sustainable foundation needed to support such a massive long-term endeavor. It's all about shaping the future on a grand scale.
An incredible, maybe unprecedented level of ambition. And like you said, it's a story still very much being written. We don't know if he'll achieve all these goals.
Nobody knows. The challenges are immense for every single one of these ventures, but the impact he's already had on the auto industry, on aerospace, on renewable energy, just on the conversation about what's possible that's undeniable.
Yeah, regardless of the final outcome for Mars or Neuralink, he's definitely shaken things up.
For sure. He's pushed boundaries, forced established players to react, and inspired a lot of people, even while generating significant controversy. His journey is already a major case study in ambition and execution.
So as we wrap up this dive into his story so far, it leaves you thinking, with all these different irons in the fire space, energy, AI interfaces, transport, which one, if any, do you think will ultimately be seen as his most significant legacy? What's the venture that has the potential to change our world the most profoundly? Definitely something to chew on.